Welcome to another Northern Monkeys datasheet review. This time we're taking a look at the captain with jump pack. So this guy's a great leader for, surprise surprise, your jump pack units in Space Marines. Really interesting with some of the new more melee focused detachments, and this guy kind of turns them from utility picks into more hammers. And with that movement 12, it kind of turns your sort of Space Marines into Blood Angels in a weird way. Now he's a great unit, so let's take a look at his datasheet, the detachments you can put him in, and the squads he can lead. So coming in at a bargain 75 points, I think this guy might be the cheapest captain in the game. And yeah, absolutely fantastic. Gets all the standard stats you'd expect, the 5 wounds, which is really nice for absorbing a few more 2 damage hits. And he gets access to a very decent melee through a power fist or a thunder hammer. And he also has access to reducing the command points cost as a standard captain. Apart from that though, he's got a lot of little funny tricks going on, so let's break them down. So the standard captain ability, Rites of Battle. When you target this guy's unit with a stratagem, you reduce the cost of it by 1 command point. Really good. It's just generally great to have that. That CP economy is just really good for Space Marines, and this guy helps you keep that up. Now, there's a load of good stratagems that you can use this on. You know, your assault intercessors, they're ones getting in there. They have that grenades keyword. Well, this makes that free. It's really nice for just chipping a little bit more damage. We'll talk more about that later. And also, it's great for any combat buffs. But I think the one that really shines here is rapid ingress. This is probably one of the more important stratagems to learn how to use, as it's just such a strong tool. Whenever you see kind of top players playing, they're always trying to leverage this, even if they don't have deep strike. But your captain with jump pack and his unit will have deep strike. This just makes this incredibly strong for being able to get in your opponent's backfield, threaten them, even just coming back behind ruins, and just your opponent won't know where this unit's coming in, and it can give them a lot of mind games, a lot of headaches. So given that he adds a little bit more punch to his unit himself, literally with his power fist, these are all kind of worth it if you're adding these damage buffs, if you're going for these rapid ingress plays. It's really good. And before we get into this guy's weapons, we need to talk about his second ability, Angel's Wrath. Basically, whenever you charge, which you're likely going to be doing with this guy's deep strike and movement 12, you add 1 to the strength of melee weapons for his whole squad, not just himself. So this is really good. These guys are very fast, they're going to get the drop on the enemy. And for this kind of damage trading piece, just this extra strength, we'll see it hit some really key break points for this squad. So this guy has a load of different melee weapons you can take him with. There's the chainsword, which just gives you loads of attacks, but that AP1 kind of holds it back. Even with the boost this guy gives you to your strength, taking up to strength 5, I just don't know if that's worth it. The relic weapon is generally interesting. Being strength 6 on the charge, that's really good for just like chopping up enemy kind of infantry. But yeah, probably not worth it compared to the power fist. This will have you wounding Marines on 2s, with that +1 strength on the charge. Certain vehicles, you'll be wounding them on 4s. I think the fist is really the best. The thunder hammer is cool, but that unreliability on the hits, you know, maybe you don't want that. This guy might not always be going into your oath of moment target, you know, he might be kind of dealing with something on the flank. So just that unreliability when you roll your attacks and you just happen to get like 3 1s and 2s, you just, you know, it's maybe just not worth it for that dev wounds. Yeah. There's also the shooting attacks that this guy can have. They're a little less impactful. You know, you've got a plasma pistol, a flamer pistol, and a bolt pistol. Generally, it's neither here nor there. For if you're leading a squad that has a bunch of flamers, maybe you add the flamers just to have a nice little Overwatch threat versus stuff like Eldar that's a bit more vulnerable to it. Or you just have him with a plasma pistol. Assault Marines that he joins, the kind of jump pack intercessors, they can also have 2 plasma pistols. So this is really good for just kind of having that like sheer volume of plasma fire. You might not necessarily want to overcharge them because of the hazardous tests, but still, it's just that chip damage, and we'll see that adds up with this squad really nicely. He can also take the relic shield. He can only have a thunder hammer and a chainsaw with the relic shield, which as we've said aren't the best options. And that takes him from 5 wounds to 6 wounds for giving up his pistol to have that shield. I generally don't love this, because against damage 1 it's fine, but against any other damage type, if you think about it, it doesn't really matter. Damage 2, it's still going to be 3 hits to kill him. Damage 3, it's still going to be 2 hits to kill him, and the same for damage 4 and above. So yeah, I just don't see the giving up the pistol being particularly worth it, especially considering you then have to take a slightly suboptimal weapon option. So my first pick for detachments for this guy is obviously Gladius. Absolutely great, considering the amazing suite of stratagems Gladius has. This guy making one of them cost less, really strong. You've got stuff like the fallback, shoot and charge. That's really nice for this. The advance and charge, that turns them from, if you think about it, they're moving 12 with fly, so they can go over enemy units. And then when they advance as well, potentially moving 18, you can just really get stuck into your opponent's back line and really chop them up. On top of that, you've got access to the, I think it's Honor the Chapter, which is +1 to wound and +1 AP on the charge. This unit does kind of really need AP, you know, if you really want to like punch up into tougher stuff like Marines. So yeah, another really strong thing to have access to. And as we'll talk about later, one of my favourite units for this guy is they get bonuses on the charge. So getting that advance and charge, that fallback and charge, really, really nice, especially considering this guy gives you extra strength as well. Just really helps you get the drop on your opponent. And all of this generally adds up together to make a really strong and fast missile unit. And that's kind of a nice thing for Marines, is it's generally something they kind of lack, especially with that fly keyword. It's really, really good stuff for just getting over your opponent's lines where they don't want you. Now, one detachment, one of the new ones that I thought might be quite good for this guy, the Orbital Assault Force. Essentially, it gives you a bunch of your units deep strike, and also when you come in from deep strike, you get to reroll wound rolls of 1. This is quite nice for this guy's little squad. You know, if you put them into the oath of moment target, they're going to be super efficient. You know, you're looking at potentially being like hitting on 3s, rerolling, wounding on 3s, rerolling, maybe even 2s into other Space Marines, and then you're rerolling 1s. So that's a super efficient thing. The problem with this is, though, you can't do the rapid ingress play I was talking about. So you either have to kind of move up normally, in which case you don't get the bonus, or you have to make a 9-inch charge out of deep strike, which is just not very reliable. The maths with a reroll might even say it's okay odds, but I've never found it to be that way. There are enhancements and the things that can give you those rerolls for free. This guy can obviously do a command point reroll for free, so that's quite good, but yeah, it's still less than desirable in terms of like how reliable that is. And there's cool stratagems in here. You get like precision and +1 to hit. That's nice for this squad, being able to just like kill a character that's sort of buried at the back. You might be able to fly over enemy screens and do that. But overall, I'm not really seeing it. The buff for this squad is a little mediocre, and I think you're better off focusing in on the units that you're allowed to deep strike through the detachment rule and getting the most out of them, potentially in shooting. However, one of the detachments I am sort of very, very interested in is Reclamation Force. I think this is a great place for this little hit squad. You get this guy in his unit, you get +1 AP against objectives. This is really, really good for both the units that this guy can lead and himself. That extra AP, really, really nice for just taking you up a notch and just making your lethality really go through the roof. And often you will be using this unit to kind of fight over a primary objective. So if you're now controlling that objective, you're then -1 to be wounded. So it's a really strong synergy for this unit. On top of that, there's an absolutely great stratagem, Furious Dedication. Use this in the charge phase. When you would charge, you get +2 to your charge and an extra attack. This can turn this guy and his unit up into absolute blenders, and also gives them a 7-inch charge with access to a reroll. He can make one of those stratagems free. Really, really, really good for this unit. Just much, much more reliable. And you get, like I said, you get all those attacks. Really, really cool. There's even a cool enhancement, Libertatum. I don't know, maybe it's Tarum. Anyway, it basically gives one of your characters, if they're fighting an enemy and objective, full hit and wound rerolls. Now, there's an enhancement like this in Renegade Raiders, and it's one of the stronger things in that detachment. It's a Chaos detachment, let's not talk about those. But just having this on the captain, without Oath of Moment, this guy and his squads don't have any like innate rerolls. So you're really, really going to love this. And it just makes that Power Fist so much more consistent. You'd be surprised, like, over the course of an activation, how many 1s and 2s you're going to roll. So just making sure that you kind of, like, hand your opponent 5, potentially AP3, 2 damage saves. Very, very good. Also, like we talked about with Gladius, this detachment can fall back, shoot and charge. That's really, really nice for this squad. Just being able to fall back over enemy units and attack other guys. Get those bonuses on the charge off again. Really, really strong. And you can even give them extra OC, which is nice for controlling those objectives. This guy and his squads will only tend to be low OC, so being able to potentially like overwhelm a vehicle with the last few guys and take primary points off your opponent. Very, very good. Really interested in this detachment. It's a shame it's Ultramarines locked. Okay, and for the first squad this guy can lead, there's Vanguard Veterans. These guys are a really interesting squad. I can't get to grips with them exactly how good they are. Very recently, because of Vanguard Spearhead, I believe it's called, No, Shadowmark Talon, that's it. Shadowmark Talon was using these guys really effectively, and they've caught a points hike because of that. So it makes this squad like just a little less desirable perhaps than they were. Now these guys are great. They all can take storm shields, which gives them a 4-up invuln. Makes them like annoyingly durable. Your opponent just can't know how many of these guys they're going to kill with each shoot. And even fighting, you know, they can just stick around there. So that's really nice. I'd say maybe the one problem with these guys is they have a little lackluster melee. You know, they've got those 4 attacks, which is great. Strength 5, which the captain boosts up to strength 6 on the charge. That's pretty cool. But then they're let down by AP 1, damage 1. It's just really, I've seen this squad whiff into everything too many times. They get lethal hits, which is nice, but yeah, I don't know. With the captain in there, maybe in that Reclamation Force or Gladius, where you have access to extra AP, they're a little more scary. But then you're kind of buffing like undesirable stuff. It's still damage 1. I don't know about that. One trick they can do to really make up for this is they can all be equipped with hand flamers, which the captain can as well, as we spoke about earlier. So you give up that invuln, but the hand flamers, really, really good. Just blast your opponent and kind of like, you have then scary overwatch. This force is often going to be like in your opponent's face after they've charged and maybe killed a unit. So then them having to worry about the overwatch is pretty good. So if there's a meta with a lot of squishy things running around, like Eldar, certain builds of Sisters and the like, this can be a really good trading piece. And the captain can make that overwatch free. So yeah, a little bit of synergy there. I like this squad, I'm just not sure about them. Now my favourite pick for these guys is the Assault Intercessors with jump packs. These guys are a great squad. They have access to a Power Fist on the Sergeant, which is really nice. Between the captain and the sergeant, you're going to be ending up with 8 Power Fist attacks. And then they have all these chainsword attacks, which is great. But this guy really amps up their damage sort of through not only his own Power Fist attacks, which are very, very valuable in this unit, but the access to things like the grenades for free, the rapid ingress for free. You just end up doing so much little bits of chip damage with this unit. It's very, very strange. You kind of move up, throw a grenade, do 3 mortal wounds, fire all your plasma pistols and do a couple of damage with that. Then you charge in, you do some mortal wounds with this unit, have an ability Hammer of Wrath. You roll a dice for each member of the squad, which includes the captain, and for each 4-up that's in base-to-base contact with your opponent, you basically do mortal wounds. So that's another potentially averaging 3 mortal wounds there. So you see you've already done 6 mortal wounds, some damage with the plasma, and then you're into combat. So this is with the +1 strength that these guys get from the captain, his Power Fist attacks. You've gone from being able to either reliably kill a sort of weak enemy unit, like a squad of intercessors or a bunch of guardsmen, to now being able to almost certainly kill those squads, and also potentially be able to punch up big damage into enemy units, especially if you start using stratagems on these guys. If you think about it, even their chainswords, if you've given them something like Lance, you've given them extra AP, the +1 strength, all of a sudden they've gone from wounding marine bodies on 4s and them saving on 4s to wounding marine bodies on 2s and them saving on 5s. It's just that massive kind of swing, and it can really help you overwhelm enemies. So yeah, usually when you've got little utility units like this, that 90 points for some guys with jump packs that come in and score secondaries, I don't recommend putting a character in them, but by putting the captain in this squad, you really change the dynamic of them, and you put them into a melee missile role rather than a utility unit, thanks to things like that rapid ingress for free, all the different damage buffs he can give them. So yeah, really, really strong stuff here, one of my favourites. So I really, really love this squad. It's a cool little piece that Marines don't usually have access to. Sort of that high movement combined with fly. It's a little expensive with 165 points for this guy and his Assault Intercessors with jump packs, but it's just really, really effective. All those mortal wounds are nice, especially even into stuff like Catan these days, just being able to like sort of chip them down with grenades and the impact hits. That's all really, really good stuff. And never underestimate, especially with access to advance and charge, how fast these guys are. Their ability to kind of rapid ingress into somewhere annoying and fly over your opponent's front line and then crash into their backfield where they might not necessarily want it, and do a bunch of mortal wounds while they're going. Yeah, really, really nice. And you can put your opponent in a real bind where they're just constantly, all their movement is hampered by having to worry about where these guys are. So yeah. And then when you do they do sort of commit something to maybe block them, you just go, well, I'm not going to rapid ingress this turn. I'm going to kill that with all my Space Marine shooting. And next turn you can worry about it all again. And I've just picked up an extra unit for free. So really, really strong. And as I said earlier, lots of those little things, they just add up. The grenades, the impact hits, the plasma pistols, the power fist, the chainsword, it all just stacks up to go from like little bits of damage to just a big, you're wiping out enemy units. Love this squad for that. So thanks for watching everyone. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. This was based on the results of a recent poll that we did for what people wanted to see the next datasheet review of. I'll definitely be putting out another one of those. I really appreciate the responses. Otherwise, thanks for watching.